Poland has moved quickly to bolster its air defences after they were breached by drones last week, believed to have been launched from Russia. Days later, Romania reported an incursion into its airspace. So too, Lithuania. Poland's foreign secretary claims it was an attempt by the Kremlin to test NATO. So, just what was NATO's response, and how serious is the threat for countries like Poland? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. The closest we have been to open conflict since World War II. Those were the words of Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk after Russian drones were spotted over Poland. The UK is sending RAF Typhoon fighter jets to help the Poles, with Italy also saying it will help boost NATO's eastern flank with 2 Eurofighter jets.
A show of force by Russia and Belarus. Footage from the Russian Defense Ministry shows military exercises known as Zapad 2025. But the drills, some of which took place close to the Polish border, come at a precarious time. Russia allegedly breached Poland's airspace last week. 19 drones were launched onto Poland's territory. Some were shot down by Polish air defences. One crashed into a house and others landed in fields. No one was hurt, but its impact has been felt across Poland and other NATO nations.
This situation brings us the closest we have been to open conflict since World War II. We have a full-scale war beyond our Ukrainian-Russian border, but we already have something that goes beyond the bounds of mere provocations in our own skies. And perhaps today we need to say it again very loudly and clearly. Poland today has a political enemy who does not conceal his hostile intentions beyond its eastern border.
Russia, though, denies responsibility, pointing the finger at Ukraine. The Russian embassy in the UK said in a statement to TRT World's Roundtable, "We reiterate that Russia has no interest in heightening tensions with Poland or NATO. On the contrary, it is Kiev and its sponsors that have every reason to fuel militaristic anti-Russian hysteria, and who have repeatedly engaged in provocations for that purpose. It is therefore plain to see who to blame." NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte was quick to announce swift action against Russian aggression.
NATO is launching Eastern Sentry to bolster our posture even further along our eastern flank. This military activity will commence in the coming days and will involve a range of assets from allies including Denmark, France, United Kingdom, Germany and others.
With NATO countries ramping up their defence strategy, will it be enough to deter further provocations, and how concerned should Poland be about Russia?
Well, let's bring in our guests on this one. Joining us from Warsaw in Poland, we have Roch Dunin-Wasowicz. He's Associate Professor in Sociology at University College London. In Maryland, in the United States, we have NATO expert Leo Michel. Leo is from the Atlantic Council. Back in London, we're joined by Natia Seskuria, who is an Associate Fellow in International Security. That's at the Royal United Services Institute. And here with me in the studio, we have Alexander Vassiliev. He is a Russian-British journalist and espionage expert. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Roch, to Poland, to you first. Give me a sense how worried people are in Poland about these incursions.
Glad to be here. Obviously, this was somewhat to be expected. Poland has been a victim to different types of pressures from the Russian Federation since 2021, and the illegal incursions of forcibly pushed migrants through the Belarusian territory into Poland. So this is yet another iteration of this kinds of incursions into Polish sovereignty. Obviously, this is was much more felt by the population, considering that it happened during the night and the flurry of information was flooding the internet and the media throughout the early morning. And obviously, we had no idea what was happening on the day. But here, I think the Polish population showed a sense of resilience, as did the powers that be, both the government and the president. And they showed a united front in the face of this illegal incursion into Polish territory.
Leo, to you, how shocked were you when you woke up in the United States and saw the news and read about what happened in Poland?
I unfortunately was not too shocked. We have seen over the past several months, but I would say increasingly since the Alaska summit between Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin, an escalation of Russian actions, both directly against Ukraine. There have been, I believe, some 3,500 drone attacks and close to 200 ballistic missile attacks on Ukraine just since the beginning of this month. I think that Mr. Putin must feel that he came out ahead in terms of this Alaska meeting. He's met none of the commitments that at least President Trump suggested he would, like a possible ceasefire or something like that, or a meeting with President Zelensky. And we've seen really over the years, but particularly over the past 2 years, a steady escalation in Russian actions that fall in the category of hybrid warfare. And this, to me, is not that dissimilar from the attacks on infrastructure, on energy systems, on transportation, for example, interfering with civilian aircraft. The new thing about this is that it really is, I think, a deliberate intrusion of Polish airspace at a fairly significant level. There's no way that NATO knows in advance that these are unarmed drones. So sending 19 drones, some of which were intercepted, some of which were clearly aimed to send a signal by surveying sensitive sites in Poland, I think this is an escalation. Not a violent one, but an escalation nonetheless, and NATO was correct to respond.
Thanks, Leo. Natia, to you, just tell me your impression of what you've seen then. Poland's Prime Minister Tusk said it is the closest his country has been to open conflict since World War II. How far away do you think we are getting to that?
Well, I do agree with the previous speaker. I think this is a major violation of NATO airspace, in which is basically Putin signaling that he wants to test Western response. And unlike many other attempts to violate Western airspaces, this is the first time when a NATO member has directly engaged Russian drones since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. So it's a serious escalation. It is Putin's attempt to demonstrate that he's not interested in any kind of peaceful resolution of the conflict in Ukraine. And quite the contrary, I think this is him signaling that his appetite goes beyond Ukraine. And in this case, I think it's very important to see what would be further steps taken by NATO in order to respond to this kind of provocations. Obviously, the this kind of incursion has already been responded by NATO promptly, but I think it's more important to think about how NATO will deal with further attempts from the Russian side to escalate the conflict, which I believe we will see in the immediate future.
Thanks, Natia. Alexander, to you then. Why is Putin doing this? We've heard Natia just say that he's testing the Western response. Do you think that's what he's doing, or is there more to this?
Look, I think that there are at least three possible explanations here. First one is that it was an honest mistake by the Russian military. The second one, it's quite popular now among experts, is that Russian drones were jammed and hijacked by the Ukrainians and sent
19 of them?
Yeah, sent over to Ukraine. I'm not an expert in electronics.
Okay.
Thing is that who benefits from all this, most of all, is President Zelensky. Russia doesn't benefit from it. No one does. Zelensky does benefit from it.
How does he benefit?
Because he has been trying to drag NATO countries into an open, direct confrontation with Russia. This helps him a lot. A third option is that Putin really, well, Russians really planned this. That was a planned invasion. But I don't think that Russia wants to invade any NATO country, to invade Poland, for instance. No. But maybe it was a signal, it was a test of NATO defenses, and also a signal to Poland to think twice before getting into an open, direct confrontation with Russia.
Tell me how
to trigger the discussion.
How does this benefit Zelensky when he's already got the support of so many NATO countries giving him weapons, giving him training? What more does he need?
Well, he needs boots on the ground. He needs NATO infantry in Ukraine. And I think Poland is in a dangerous place now, because if an open confrontation breaks out, Poland will be at the front line of the war. And it will be their infantry who will be used as cannon fodder by NATO, the way they use Ukrainian soldiers now, who are dying in enormous numbers. By the way, according to the Russian media, 10,000 Polish mercenaries have been already killed in Ukraine. I don't know whether it's correct or not, but thousands of them probably. So if the Polish people want to serve as a cannon fodder for, I don't know, France, Britain, America, it may happen. And by the way, make no mistake, if you think that Britain and France and Germany will help Poland, I'll have to disappoint you, because Britain is in a very, very deep crisis now. Political, economic, moral. No one wants to fight for Poland. No one. Last year there was an opinion poll of young British people.
They don't want to fight.
Yeah, asking 15% of people who answered the question was, "Are you ready to fight for Britain?" For Britain, it was 15%. Who wants to fight for Poland? Probably zero.
Thanks, Alexander. Well, let's go back to Poland. Roch, you heard all of that. That's the Russian take on what's happening. Tell me, is Poland really in a dangerous place right now? Is that how people are feeling?
I would probably disagree with the fact that 0% of British society would want to fight for Poland, considering that there's almost 1 million Poles living in the United Kingdom, and Polish is the second most commonly spoken language in the UK. So that is probably a sociological point for me. I think Poland is very much aware of its somewhat precarious geopolitical position. That's why it is spending almost 5% of its GDP on its arms procurement. That's why it's also building up its resilience that is not only based on the capacities of the state, but also of society at large, especially on the local level and considering civil society. And those are the lessons that we're drawing from our Ukrainian colleagues and how they've stemmed the Russian invasion back in 2022, how this decentralized bottom-up resistance that was complemented what the state was doing prevented Russia from capturing all of Ukraine within 3 days, as it was supposed to happen in 2022. So for sure, Poland is building up its resilience both internally and externally. President Nawrocki was in Berlin and in Paris, and I think there is resolve among Poland's European partners that this was an incursion not just into Poland's territory, but into NATO's territory. It is true that for the first time, conventional warfare was being waged over Poland since the end of the Second World War. As you know, Poland is very deeply connected to the both social and economic and political tissue of the rest of Europe. I think if we were to think that incursion into Poland would not, any kind of military confrontation with Poland would not affect the European economy at large, particularly German economy, with which Poland is so symbiotic, is definitely a false argument. So in that sense, Poland's European allies are very much in the same boat, right? Poland is obviously on the front line. Military arrangements are happening right now in Belarus. The Zapad training is also something that Poland is very much looking into and is aware of the fact that Russia is essentially trialing different modes of repeating what it did in 2022. But I think the the multiplicity of Poland's alliances with the United States, although the response from Washington has been meek, and its European partners, but also its internal heft, both military and societally, is something that very much the government is preparing for.
Thanks, Roch. Leo, just come in on this whole issue between Russia, what has happened with the drones, and Poland. Surely Vladimir Putin would not be stupid enough to attack Poland or any other NATO country right now.
Well, he is, in fact, attacking them. But as I said, through a number of hybrid measures, which fall below the armed attack on a country that would that could trigger Article 5 of the NATO treaty. No, I think to suggest that that Ukraine somehow took control of these Russian drones to create an incident with Poland is that's living in an alternative universe with alternative facts. There's really nothing to suggest that, given, as I mentioned before, the long running escalation that Russia has undertaken with its attacks, including against many, many civilian targets, and frankly, against European delegations, an EU delegation in Kyiv, a British Council delegation, I believe it is, in Kyiv, and even a US-owned manufacturing site in Western Ukraine. So I believe that these are deliberate measures. They are deliberate to test the alliance, to try to embarrass the alliance when there is sometimes differences of view. And also, I'm afraid to say this. Well, I'm not afraid to say this. I think it's unfortunate that I must say this. A feeling that the United States really doesn't have its heart in the effort to bring an end, to bring an immediate ceasefire, and to bring an end to this war that would ensure Ukrainian sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. These are things that Mr. Putin has sought for a long time, not peace in Ukraine, but a very large piece of Ukraine.
Thank you, Leo. Natia, it's reported now that Polish anti-drone teams will receive training in Poland from Ukrainian experts who really, I'm guessing, are world leaders right now in terms of repelling drones. That's significant, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And it makes sense because Ukrainians have gained a lot of experience dealing with the Russian attacks. And as it was mentioned, Russia has been relentlessly bombing Ukrainian cities with hundreds of drones per day. So it makes sense that this kind of experience sharing will take place, because I believe that this was not a unique case when Russia violated a NATO airspace. These kind of instances have happened before, even though this Polish violation of the Polish airspace has been, as it was mentioned, quite a serious one compared to the previous cases. However, I do think that Russia will try to test the Western unity in that way as well, and this obviously falls below the threshold of Article 5. And I think as long as Putin can carry on using its hybrid methods of warfare, he will try to weaken Western unity. And I think big question, and possibly the elephant in the room, is to what extent United States is still engaged and involved in protecting the security of the European allies.
Thank you, Natia. Alexander, to you, talk to me about these Zapad exercises then taking place in Belarus, Russian troops there as well. The word Zapad in Russian translates in English as West?
West.
The
Yes.
West.
Well, as far as I know, these military exercises happen every 4 years. So it's a regular thing. The new thing is that apparently they are testing the launches of ballistic missiles, but they're not launching them. They do every step necessary to launch, but then they stop. They don't launch them. So, yeah, they do this thing. Look, as I said before, I don't think Putin is going to invade Poland. Here is why. The Soviet Union has been controlled the Eastern Europe for 45 years after the Second World War. They had communist parties, secret services, propaganda, media, all that. Finally, well, eventually it all collapsed. When it was collapsing, Putin was there. Putin was in Dresden as working as a KGB officer. He saw it with his own eyes. I'm sure he understands that, well, you can invade a country, but how are you going to control the occupied territory? I don't think it's possible in Poland, where the population is extremely patriotic and anti-Russian sentiments are pretty strong because of our very complicated mutual history.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's possible, and Putin is not an idiot, but he understands that. In Ukraine, it's different, right? Because in Ukraine, I don't think the Russians want to occupy the whole of Ukraine, but some areas populated mostly by Russians, they can control because those are Russians. Let me remind you that President Zelensky, until 2017, didn't speak Ukrainian at all. He built his career in show business in Russian. He was well known in Russia too. So Crimea, when they did the operation...
He is Ukrainian. He is Ukrainian man to his heart and soul.
Yes,
whatever language he grew up speaking is...
As a citizen, yes. When they did the operation in Crimea in 2014, no one was killed, not a single person. Why was it possible? Because people wanted this. There was no resistance.
Thanks, Alexander. Back to you, Roch. I notice it's been a very good week for a Polish air defense company called Mesko. They have an air defense system called Pioran, and that is now being sold to Sweden for a cool 274 million euros. So it's clear what's been happening in Poland has been sharpening minds elsewhere.
Indeed, and I also agree with the previous speaker that about the impossibility of controlling a country like Poland and how Russians and Soviets tried it before and never succeeded. But yes, in terms of Polish military capabilities and its industry, that's part of the larger resilience plan that I was mentioning earlier. I think Poland is very much aware that it needs to build up its alliances, particularly with the United States, by purchasing armaments from the United States and elsewhere from Europe, and that is an important dimension of how NATO, particularly under President Trump, has been evolving in terms of how what this alliance is underwritten, not just the North Atlantic Treaty, but the actual economic dependencies.
Thanks, Roch.
2022.
I want to bring Leo back in. Leo, we were in Warsaw earlier this year with Roundtable, and I interviewed the Polish defense procurement minister. I asked him, are you happy spending 5% of GDP on defense? And his answer was, we will spend 6% if needed. We will spend 7% if needed. Not one Russian soldier will set foot on Polish soil uninvited. There's a real resilience at the highest level in Poland to get ready for whatever may be coming down the line.
Well, there certainly is, and I'm glad to see that. I am glad to see the increases by Europe and also by Canada in defense spending. Their increases will, if they follow through on all of these pledges, which I believe they will exceed the percent of U.S. defense spending as a percentage of our GDP. Which is right now around 3.5%, and really not substantial increases, at least not in the ways that would help transatlantic defense, are planned in the defense budget, at least the details that we know to date. But it is, look, it's important as well that the U.S. president speak clearly, and he really has not. He's made a few cryptic posts on the social media app. He's said something over the weekend that apparently would suggest that now he does view Russia as the aggressor. But look, even on the occasions when Mr. Trump has said something critical of Mr. Putin or claims that he's losing patience with the Russian leader, and threaten stiff sanctions, it's important not only to listen to what he says or writes on Truth Social, it's important to see what does he do. And the facts, as I read them now, are that the U.S. has not imposed sanctions. President Trump has conditioned new sanctions on Russia, on all NATO countries stopping the imports of Russian energy, when he knows quite well that at least two of the allies, Hungary and Slovakia, have no inclination to do this. Mr. Trump has had high praise for Mr. Orban and vice versa now for years. Mr. Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, has praised Mr. Putin's in the wake of the Alaska summit. So I think we have to watch what the U.S. does, and to date, it's been very confused and not a strong, resilient, meaningful response to this increased Russian pressure on Ukraine.
Thanks, Leo. Roch and Alexander here in the studio as well. Thank you all. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.